And now, please welcome Laimon Eglentals.
As you watch the TV and as you see so much that's online these days, you always see these people who are up the front leaders, and you can see on cameras in interviews with the politicians, they're waiting for that little political gaffe. They say the wrong thing. It's only something that they're thinking or they know about, and it's just a few seconds, and their career could be done because they mentioned the wrong thing. As we look around and I hear some of the events at the moment, we've got presidential elections and political elections and elections over here in Australia. You're going to be seeing all these people that are trying to get this small little thing of someone making a mistake and saying the wrong thing to spread all around the world. Well, does that happen at other times? Do we have it that it also happens and comes through in the Bible? There's seemingly instances where you think, they just said the wrong thing. How on earth did that happen? And what I'm presenting here is actually when the devil spoke the gospel. It's a really crazy thing to think because you think he's opposed. Well, let's have a look and turn in Acts 16. And there's a really interesting story that we sometimes sort of pass over and skip about what happens here. And Paul and Silas, they're going out preaching, and as they do, as they go into this new town, they have this interesting thing that happens. It says from verse 16 on, "One day, as they were going down to the place of prayer, we met a demon-possessed slave girl. She was a fortune teller who earned a lot of money for her masters. She followed Paul and the rest of us, shouting, 'These men are servants of the Most High God, and they have come to tell you how to be saved.'" How about that? Someone is out there saying, these men are servants of the Most High God. They're telling you how to be saved. Isn't that a message really? Someone's out there proclaiming the gospel, saying exactly the right words. We're not saying that Paul and Silas are heretics. They're saying the right words. They're saying exactly what the gospel is, that these men are from God. They're going to tell you how to be saved. But what's this thing about a slave girl coming out who's a fortune teller doing it? It's this devil-possessed girl as such. She's saying it. It doesn't seem to add up in this story. It seems really strange. If you carry on in the next verses, it says, "This went on day after day until Paul got so exasperated that he turned and said to the demon within her, 'I command you in the name of Jesus Christ, come out of her.' And instantly it left her. It departed." So Paul is actually stopping this girl preaching and saying the gospel. It's a really strange story. What happens then is it's a bit of a riot in the city. Paul gets thrown in jail. There's an earthquake. He released. He saves one of the Roman soldiers in the jail who was about to fall on his sword. It's an unusual story. But why is the devil, so to speak, preaching the good news? Why is it coming from the source that you would least expect it to come from? It's not the only time in the Bible we have this. Jesus' first evangelist, the first person going out preaching the gospel, well, if you remember the story, it was when Jesus was sailing across Lake Galilee, I think it was, and he comes across and there's a man who's possessed. He's possessed by a legion of demons. And they go out and they plead with Jesus. Then it's like, "Jesus, don't torture us. We know you're the Son of the Most High God." They are saying exactly what we know, that Jesus is the Son of God. And that's coming from a legion of demons who Jesus cast into the pigs who go flying off the cliff. It's not the only time when we have these instances of the people who you think are opposed are actually saying the gospel. Think of the story of Judas. Judas is out there and he is actually going out preaching. He's going out telling the good news. He's saying of Jesus and speaking of Jesus. And what do we know of Judas? We know that he ends up having the spirit of Satan come through into him and betraying Jesus to send him off to be executed. That was from Judas. And another instance, when you think of Jesus being crucified and he's sent up and executed on the cross, what is above the cross? We have the words that Pilate put on a sign in 3 languages saying, "Jesus, King of the Jews." The man who would execute and give the orders to have Jesus killed was saying he was King of the Jews. Why is it always these strange stories where we have Judas, who betrayed Jesus, preaching the gospel? We have Pilate, who executed Jesus preaching the gospel. We have Caiaphas, the high priest, who said it's better for one man to die than the nation to perish, who also implicated in Jesus' death, preaching the actual gospel. We also have demons, and we have the devil and those possessed preaching the good news. Why on earth would the one we least expected preach it? Well, it made me think, and I'll try to show you an illustration. It's a bit like, say, if I want to sell something. How about if I want to sell you a drink? Well, it's going to taste really great. It's going to be fantastic, and it's one of the world's most popular drinks. It'll taste great. It'll make you feel better. So why not have a drink? I could tell you that it's probably loaded with fructose, and which makes you fat, and it's got a lot of health implications. This one might not be. It's probably got artificial sweeteners, which may be implicated in diabetes, it seems to indicate. It might not be the best thing for you. But the biggest reason, if you want this drink or not, is quite possibly sometimes we've had products and they've gone out and they've been tainted. They've been poisoned. There was a scandal a few years ago with, I think it was infant formula that came out of China, and they put the wrong substance in there, and it was like a chemical filler. It ended up a few children actually died because they had something that had been poisoned. And when I think of this, I think that often the case is that if you get the right thing, but the wrong thing in it, if I put a drop of poison, no one will want to touch it. When we look at Christianity and we look at all the issues that come up with those who challenge it and oppose it, and often it gets quite a bad rap in the media and in general society, most of the cases it's because there's a Christian who's being hypocritical. There's a Christian who's acting very un-Christ-like. There might be, I just think of all the scandals, there's like sexual abuse scandals in a number of denominations. How easy is it to taint and poison the message we have of Christ, and we get that taken away and poisoned because the people telling it are doing the wrong thing. The people saying it are the ones delivering maybe the right message, but the wrong people, and their lives are anything but Christ-like. When I look and I think of those who particularly aren't Christian and those who don't believe in anything as an atheist, it's really interesting when I think and I hear a lot of their comments and some of their books and their writings and their arguments. Often they actually have an argument a bit like this. They hate and they are opposed to a vindictive God, an angry God, a God who's capricious, a God who just wants to torture people, a God who wants to have them in hell forever and ever, a God who seemingly hates them and have got these arbitrary rules that they can't follow. When I look at it and I think about it, I actually think for a lot of people and that I know are atheists, I actually agree with a lot of that, because those descriptions there don't really sound like God. They don't sound like the God I know. They sound a bit more like the devil. And I think a lot of people who reject and despise and are angry at God have a picture where it's really the devil they're angry with, who's got all those characteristics, and they're transferring it on the wrong way. Just recently, there was an interesting book that has come out, and it is actually talking about the faith of one of the most prominent atheists of the time. It's called The Faith of Christopher Hitchens. Now, it's an interesting one. It was written by someone who knew him quite well, and it talks about Christopher Hitchens, I guess, in some of the stories and how background scenes of someone who knew him really well. And they said often Christopher Hitchens is an atheist, one of the leading atheists, and he died of cancer a few years ago, and he was and stayed an atheist. But at the end, he said Christopher Hitchens was considering Christianity and thinking about it. And I guess partly, like he said, they had road trips where they were going through and they were reading the Gospel of John. So he did get something out of it. And for those who may not know Christopher Hitchens, he's got a very prominent brother as well who is a Christian, who's involved in the media and a journalist as well. And so he knew it. He knew a lot about Christianity. And one thing that sometimes you can get, and I'm sure Christopher Hitchens and a number of other people, they could describe the gospel really well. They could tell you exactly what it was, even if they didn't agree with it, even if they opposed it. So when we look and we think, and we see it in the Bible too, that sometimes we have the gospel preached, even by the devil. Why on earth is that happening? And it's like this. Sometimes it can be the right message, from the wrong people, because we have things that are tainted. And the best way to taint something that could be good or useful for us is if we just put a little bit of poison, or we poison the message. And when I think, why on earth would the devil speak the gospel? The only real reason I can think of is because he's trying to taint and poison the message of Christianity and of Christ by changing it because it's put in the wrong sort of vessels.
To help you understand God's Word in a whole new way, go to goodnewsunlimited.com. You can sign up there to get your free devotional delivered to you each day. This program has been paid for by the partners and friends of Good News Unlimited. Word spreads fast.